Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for doing the Mangalacharan for us today. As we wait for Mataji, we can start reading. So we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 2, Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And today we are on text 14. So as we wait for Mataji, we can start reading the text and translation and purport. Do I have any volunteers? For Janukya, Mataji, are you able to read the text and translation?
Hare Krishna, it's on the phone. I can try and somebody read it to begin with, and then I will actually try and connect on the computer.
Okay, so we are on text 14.
2:6:14, did you say?
Yes, 2:10:14.
2:10:14, Haribol. I'll just try and get to on the computer. Yeah. If you can read, somebody can read in the meantime, yeah?
Yeah, Panchali Mataji has joined, so we can ask her to handle.
I'm
Hare
really
Krishna
sorry.
Mataji.
I'm really sorry. I'm just a bit late.
Okay. Hare
Because
Krishna Mataji, Danvat Pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances on behalf of everybody who have joined the group and are about to join. Mataji, we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 2, Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the Bhagavatam, is the answers to all questions. And today the text, we are always on text 14 and probably 15 if you would like that as well.
thank you. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Mataji, can I just ask Priya Govind Prabhu? Priya Govind Prabhu, Hare Krishna. You are the host for today. Are you able to host the session today, Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I've just finished another class just now, and I'll try to do so.
Okay. I've handed over to Mataji, so you just have to, I think, I'm here in the background, but it would be good for Mataji to get to know you as well. Priya Govind Prabhuji does the local preaching at our center. So he's very instrumental. He's very instrumental. So
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam to you and to all of you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to do the service. So do correct me, Prabhuji, because, you know, I'm just a very, very new devotee. So please do correct me if I'm going wrong anywhere. So I'm just doing a service to...
Mataji, I'm a neophyte devotee. I'm a neophyte devotee myself.
Same here, Prabhuji. So I'm just doing the service and following the instructions of my guru. So please correct me if I go wrong anywhere. So we are doing chapter Canto 2, chapter 10, and verse number 14 today. So would anyone want to do the Mangalacharan, or would you?
We have done the Mangalacharan.
Oh, you've done the Mangalacharan. And
Yes.
have you read the verse as well, Mataji?
No, we haven't. We were just about to read the verse.
Okay. Let me just.
Javanna Kanya Mataji was just trying to get it on her phone or computer.
Okay.
And
Let me
then
just.
we joined.
Let me read it. So it's a verse without a
You
purpose.
can share your
But
screen.
it's actually quite a technical verse, so I'm not sure we'll be able to complete verse 15. But I'll see how much we can do. So I'll just say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasim Tato Jayamudiraya. Nashtaprayasya Bhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Ruttamaśloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtiki. So the verse says, Adhidaivam Atadhyatmam Adhibhutam iti Prabhu Ataikam Paurusham Viryam Tritha Pityate Tachvinu. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Just hear from me how the potency of his lordship divides one into three, called the controlling entities, the controlled entities, and the material bodies, in the manner mentioned above. Okay, so Om Jnana Timirantayatsa Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tashmai Sri Guruve Namah. So I offer my obeisances to my Guru, without whose mercy and without the mercy of the Lordships, I wouldn't have been able to do the service. So my prayers and obeisances to him and to all the Jagat Gurus, and also to Stota Krishna Prabhu, Radhapati Gopinath Prabhu, who has also helped me in understanding a bit about what we are going to talk about today. So the verse today talks about the three things: the controlled state, the controlling, and the material bodies or the senses. Now we are discussing about Ashra Tattva. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate source of everything that is Krishna, and it tells us how Krishna is the source, the ultimate source of every single thing that exists in creation, whether in the material universe or in the spiritual universe. Now, he being the ultimate source is being explained in more details in this particular chapter. And this is with the reference to creation in this material world. And all the questions are being answered here by Sukdev Goswami when Parikshit Maharaj asks him the questions. And Sukdev Goswami talks about the 10 topics. And as we looked into, so I think last Saturday we were discussing about the Ashra Tattva in verse number 7. So verse 7, 8, and 9 talks about Ashra Tattva, which is the 10th topic, and which is the ultimate topic, and talks about the ultimate shelter being Krishna. Now, this ultimate shelter, because this is the most important topic, if you remember, we discussed about how the other 9 topics are simply the lakshanas, and the 10th topic carries everything else. The other 9 topics introduces or leads into the 10th topic, just as the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum, whereas the other 9 canto leads into the 10th canto. And that is why when comparing the Srimad Bhagavatam as the personality of Godhead, we say the 10th canto is the most important and the face of the Lord. And so in this particular chapter where Lord Brahma picks up on these 10th topics from the 4 Chatushlokis, he's able to, because he's so knowledgeable, he's able to understand the 10 topics. He also is able to understand how the 10th topic is the most important, and that the same is mentioned by Sukhdev Goswami as well. And so although the 10th topic is explained in verses 7, 8, and 9, it is further being explained in various parts in the rest of the verses in this chapter. So we are continuing on the Ashra Tattva as how Krishna is the source of everything and how he gives shelter because he's the source of everything, because everything comes from him, how he creates us, he maintains us, and when it's time, it is all taken up by him. He destroys us. So let's start with it's quite a technical verse. So do stop me if there is anything to be discussed further, or if you want me to repeat something. So please do stop me. So let's start with a short pastime, and I was listening to this pastime from Premananda Prabhu. And he was saying this was a pastime of a boy who was quite innocent, and he didn't believe in God and all, but then so his parents asked him to go to a gurukul and put him under the shelter of a guru. And so this guru said, what do you do? And the boy said, I didn't do anything, but you have to provide me. I come from a family which provides me with proper food. So I need 2.5 kilos of rice every day. And that's a lot. So this guru, now they in the Gurukul and where they were able to afford this. So the Gurukul says, fine. So your task, I'll provide you with that. Your task is to go to the forest every day, cut some woods and bring that to the Gurukul. That's all you have to do. I'll provide you with the rice. You go and, cook your own rice and things in the forest. So the boy takes that 2.5, that high kilo of rice and takes it to the forest. And then the only thing that the guru said was that the only condition is, I'm giving this to you, the only condition is that you have to offer it to my Lord before you can eat it, just like I offer it to the Lord. So you can only offer it to the Lord, and only then can you eat it as prasad. Before that, you cannot eat it. So that's the instructions of me. So the boy said, yes, what big deal? So I'll just cook it for me. I'll just offer it quickly to your Lord. And then just like, in the Gurukul, we offer it for some time and we eat it. I'll do the same. So he goes to the forest and he cooks the meal, and he says, my guru's Lord, just come quickly and then have this, have the food so that I can have it after this. And so, lo and behold, who comes? He saw, a man, a beautiful, a very, very handsome man, come with a bow and arrow. He comes and he asks, who are you? And he says, I'm Lord Ram. So I'm your guru's guru. I'm your guru's Lord. So you asked me to come and eat, so I've just come to eat this. So the boy offers it to him, and Lord Ram, he eats the entire 2.5 kilos of rice. He eats it all. So the boy was a bit, he was not particularly happy. So it's a big pastime, so I'm making it very short. So he goes back to his guru and says, next day, you give me 5 kilos of rice, because, your Lord comes and then he eats 2.5 kilos. So I need the other 2.5. So the guru says, fine, we can afford it. So the next day he gives him 5 kilos. So the boy cooks and then say, oh, my guru's Lord, just come and have your food. And then, I can eat. And then when he looks up, he says that, and he looks up and he sees Lord Rama, and he sees a woman with him. And he says, so who's this? And the Lord said, this is my wife, Sita. So she's come as well, because you cooked very well yesterday. So she's come as well. And so the boy had to offer the whole rice and whatever he cooked. And then Lord Ram had half and Mother Sita had half. So nothing was left. And the boy was getting a bit irritated. He said, okay, fine. He's brought in, a lady, his wife. That's fine. I'm not going to say anything. So he goes back to his guru and says, your Lord came with his wife today. You didn't tell me. So tomorrow you give me, 7.5 kilos of rice because both of them come. So the next day he cooks, he calls for his guru's Lord. He looks up and he sees the Lord with his wife, and there was another man. And he says, who is that man? And then the Lord says, that's my brother, Lakshman. And then the boy said, why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you tell me you're going to bring him? And then the Lord was just smiling. But obviously, so the boy offered all the 7.5 kilos of rice that was had by all three of them. And this goes on for 2 or 3. So each time the boy would go and ask for extra rice, and then the Lord would bring, first he brought Mother Sita, then Lakshman, then he brought, Bharat and Shatrughna, and the last day he brought, Hanuman. And the boy was like, why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you tell me before that you're going to bring in so many people? And the Lord just smiled. And so he goes back to his guru and says, you just have to come and see what's happening. Your Lord he's just bringing whoever he feels like bringing. He doesn't allow me to eat. He eats it, and all his associates eats it. And the guru was thinking, what is happening? I mean, obviously he's the guru, he knows everything. But he says, okay, fine, I'll go with you. So the next day, the boy took a lot of rice and lots of other ingredients. He put that there in the forest, and he said, my guru's Lord, just come. And so Lord Rama came, and, all the brothers came, their wives came, Hanuman was there, and then there were some others from the Vanar army. They all came. And the boy said, look, I've got a lot of work to do today. So these are the things you cook today. And then, when you finished, eat it. And then if you can leave some for me, and then I'll eat it as well. So now I've got everything. You can't blame me that I didn't bring anything, but you have to cook it. You cook, I cook every day. Now you cook. And so Lord Rama and Mother Sita said, okay, fine. So they got around cooking. And then by this time, the young boy's guru had come. Now, he was a very elevated devotee. I mean, elevated devotees, they would speak to the Lord at all times. We see, and Prabhupada used to say, he used to talk to Krishna all the time. So the guru came, and he paid his obeisances to Lord Rama and says, my Lord, what am I seeing? You are working, Mother Sita's working, everybody's working just to give food to this young boy. And so the Lord said, but that is it. This young boy, he called me with the belief that his guru's Lord comes, eats the food, and gives him, and then that is the food he can eat. So you give ashray to this young boy. I give ashray to you, but I also give ashray to this young boy. I give shelter to everybody. I look after everybody as long as they call me with, pure devotion. And this boy is so innocent. He called me with all his heart that, he has to offer food first to his guru's Lord. He may not know who his guru's Lord is, but he called me with all, with all sincerity. And that is all we need, in this life, in this material world. The Lord is there to provide shelter, as we were talking about the other day. He's here to provide shelter to everybody, people who like him, people who don't like him, people who don't know about him, people who know about him. But when we call him with all our sincerity, the Lord gives us shelter without us asking for it, or without us not asking for it. The Lord is so merciful, and his devotees are so merciful. There was Mother Sita, there was the others in his family, there was his guru, there was this boy's guru. The devotees are so merciful. So us, as and I can only speak for myself, had it not been for the mercy of my guru, where would we be? had we not had the shelter of the gurus. So we see when we talk about Ashray Tattva, the ultimate shelter is the Lord himself, but there are various stages where, the Lord himself works. And then there are his devotees who works as well, all to provide us with shelter. And I thought this is a perfect way to start, or rather this is one way of starting the verse today, because when we are talking about our verse today, we will realize how the Lord is the ultimate source and the ultimate shelter of everybody. But there are just so many things in between, and so many factors and so many people and personalities, all devotees of the Lord, great devotees of the Lord, who are all acting just to provide shelter to the jivas, the individual spirit souls. And so this verse talked about the controlled, the controlling, and the material, the senses, or Adidavik, Adhyatmik, Adibautik. Now, verse 8, so we start the Ashray Tattva, we started that in verse 7 when we talked about that last Saturday. Verse 8, you will have heard from Prabhuji or Mataji. Verse 8 briefly touches upon, or rather, verse 8 talks a lot about these three as well. These three, they are called as Purushas, Adidavik, Adibautik, and Adhyatmik. And so, as we said, the whole topic, the Ashray Tattva, is being discussed in, part by part throughout the rest of the chapter. It is touched upon briefly again over here in verse 14, and because it has been discussed in verse 8 a lot, there isn't any purport in this, but again, it gives us the opportunity to talk about it. So before we again go into the definition and what is being talked about, these three forces, these three purushas, these three types of persons, as it's called, let's start right at the beginning. So because, as I said, it's a bit technical, so I'm going to start right at the beginning and kind of go step by step. If I'm going wrong anywhere, again, please do correct me, because it's a bit technical, so please do correct me if I'm going wrong anywhere. There are exalted devotees over here. But please stop me as well if you need me to repeat anything. And you will see how the definitions will automatically come as we are going through the steps. So we wouldn't start with the definitions, but we would arrive at the definitions as we go through the process. So, so we see that the Lord is the supreme soul. We know that Lord, that we've come to the conclusion throughout the first canto, so far in the second canto, so far in the second chapter, where after talking about the 10 topics, we've come to the conclusion that the Lord is the supreme source of all cosmic manifestations. It is the creator, the Lord is the creator, the Lord is the reservoir and maintains the whole creation. And when time comes, the Lord is also the person who's responsible for winding up the whole of creation, or goes towards annihilation or destruction. Shrishti, creation, sthiti, maintenance, and pralaya, which is the destruction. And the energy of the Supreme Lord is the material energy, that Maya, the material energy, which we touched upon when we were talking about the Chatushloki, the second Chatushloki, which talks about Maya, who's a great devotee of the Lord and does the thankless job of, pulling the individual jivas under its control in this material universe. So the material energy is employed by the Lord to create the entire material world. Now, in this material world, there are three divisions of this energy. So this material energy and this in this material world, there are three divisions of these energies, which are called as the three Purushas: the Adhyatmic person, the Adidaivic person, and the Adipotic person. So the Adipotic is the gross body that, you know, people have. The Adhyatmic person is, you know, the Purusha is, you know, the soul, but identifying itself with the senses, or the different senses, or the perception, the senses through which we are able to perceive things. You know, whether it's a sense of hearing, sense of seeing, touching, the various senses through which we perceive things. So that's the Adhyatmic. Now, even though me as the individual soul, we know that, you know, what is our Swarup? Jiva Swarupaya Krishna Nityadas. And who is this Krishna is Nityadas? The individual soul. He is part and parcel of the Lord. So our soul is as Sat Chit Ananda as the Supreme Lord. However, coming into this material universe, one attaches oneself and starts thinking of oneself through its material bodies, through, you know, thinking that one is the material body, or one is the perception. So sometimes the soul thinks that I am the gross body. Sometimes the soul thinks that I am the mind and the intellect and the senses. So sometimes they think that they are adipotic. Sometimes the soul starts thinking that I am the adhyatmic. But in spite of the fact that, you know, even though I am as a person, as an individual soul, I am separate from my senses, my existence, we have to understand the existence of the soul is completely different from the senses. However, in this material world, it is entirely dependent on the senses. If you think of it, it's our soul inside, but we have our body and we identify ourselves. You know, I say my name is Panchali. But which is Panchali? Is it my hand, my eyes, my leg? Is it my mind, or is it my soul? So we see that the soul, although that is our true identity, we end up being dependent on our body and our senses. So when we come to the definitions of Adhyatmic or Adipotic or Adidaivic, let us look into the whole process of creation and why these three Purushas are given the name that they have been given. Now, let's start with how were these senses created and what are their functions? In Canto 3, in a discussion between Lord Kapila and his mother Devahuti, Lord Kapila explains this to Mother Devahuti in much more details, but it is only briefly mentioned here in the second canto. So first of all, as we know, as we also learned in the first canto, we have the material energy, which is agitated. So we have Pradhan, which is agitated by the glance of the expansion of Krishna. Who is the expansion of Krishna? Mahavishnu, or Karnadaksha Vishnu. Now, Krishna, as the supreme person, he himself is in Goloka, which is free from all material contamination. But we are in this material world, so somehow we have to understand Krishna has to somehow put things in order for him to function nearer to this material world. So he, in one of his expansions as Mahavishnu, he glances at nature and agitates nature. Agitates Pradhan, which turns into, then, the whole process of turning into Mahatattva, as we learned in the previous canto. Now, Mahavishnu glances at the material energy, which is lying as non-functional and inert. But when it, with his glance, he agitates the material energy, the material energy begins to interact. And when we say interact, what happens? What's the process? So first of all, this material energy differentiates into 5 elements. The 5 elements, the 5 gross elements, do we know what they are? Air, water, fire, ether, and earth. Yes, thank you. So those are the 5 elements. So first of all, these 5 elements, the material energy becomes differentiated into these 5 elements. And these 5 elements becomes the ingredients for the entire creation. Now, these 5 elements, they are separate initially, right? So to create something, we know, even if we have to make a chapati, so we have, whether we take wheat or maida or whatever, we have to combine it with water. So to create something, things have to combine. And so these 5 elements need to be combined. And for combining these 5 elements, what is required? The 3 gunas. So the 3 gunas are the 3 modes of material nature: mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance, or sattva gun, rajagun, and tamagun. These 3 gunas, which are creations of the Lord, they act as the force. They are the force and the energy that needs to act on these 5 elements for these 5 elements to function. So they act as a catalyst. However, we can see how, because we can see the other day we were talking about just how precise the Lord is. Even when those planets are gravitating in the, in space, had it not been for exact precisions, things would just bump into each other. So the Lord is the ultimate engineer, and he doesn't leave anything unattended. So these 3 gunas, that's a force. Now, a force is a force to be reckoned with. Who is going to direct these 3 gunas? So these 3 gunas, they were appointed, each were appointed with a director of these gunas. So Lord Brahma became the director of the mode of passion, Lord Vishnu, the director of the mode of sattva or goodness, and Lord Shiva as the director of the tamagun or the mode of ignorance. And so these 3 gunas, they interact according to the directions of their directors, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar or Shiva. And these directors, and they work accordingly. And then remember, these 3 gunas, they also are the force which act as a catalyst for those 5 elements to combine. Yes? However, we've come to the directors now. Among these 3 directors, Vishnu is the Lord himself, an expansion of the Lord himself. So he's the Lord himself. Lord Shiva, he is a very, very special incarnation of the Lord. We know Shiva Tattva is different. It's not Vishnu Tattva, but it's Shiva Tattva. And we've talked about, the milk and the curd. So Lord Shiva is a very, very special incarnation of the Lord. And Lord Brahma is an empowered living entity. So Lord Brahma is actually a Jiva Tattva. And these 3 personalities are directing exactly, they are directed by an act according to the will of the Supreme Lord. So the directors themselves, they are directed by the Supreme Lord. And the directors, they control the 3 gunas, they direct the three gunas, and the three gunas are the force that I help in combining those gross material things, the 5 elements, which combine to start creating things. So that's one aspect of it. So the next bit, so as also explained in Brahma Samhita, for Shrishti, Sthiti and Pralay, there is one further instrument that is required. And that is, you know, we have these various things, but where is the womb? Mother Nature or Mother Durga. Mother Durga is the instrument, or she conducts herself as according to the will of Krishna in this matter of creating, maintaining, and destructing. So Durga Devi, the material nature, acts through the 3 gunas, again under the instructions of the Lord. And so for her to act, she is also directed by the directors of these 3 gunas, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar. But ultimately, she's directed by the Lord, because ultimately they are also working under the will of the Lord. So we've talked about the 3 gunas, we've talked about their directors, we've talked about the womb, which is Mother Nature, and we've talked about the 5 elements. Is that okay so far? Am I going? Yes?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, all right. So now Lord Brahma, he creates according to the design of Krishna, who gives him the intelligence, and he gives him the ingredients and the skills and the knowledge to create. Now, Brahma creates the bodies of the living entities, but Lord Brahma, he does not have the entire, he does not have the power to do the entire creation himself. So what does he do? He first creates the Prajapatis, so his sons, the Prajapatis, who are the first of each species. And then those Prajapatis, they further create different species. So Lord Brahma creates his sons, the Prajapatis, and then the Prajapatis create the other species of living entity. Now, what does creation mean then? We talked about those 5 elements combining. So what does creation mean? So creation literally means, okay, creating the material bodies. But creating the material bodies involves combining those 5 elements, and not just combining those 5 elements, but the main thing, awarding suitable senses of perception and senses of action to those material bodies. We might have our gross body, you know, whether it's in the human form, animal form, or whichever form, right? From an ant, there are 8.4 million species. So we may have those 5 elements may combine together to give a material body. However, who gives us these senses, the senses of perception and the senses of action, without which the gross body is, you know, does not have any meaning at all? So this is where we see another aspect coming in. So when awarding the senses, we hear about the Virat Purusha. So that's another aspect of creation coming in now. Who is the Virat Purusha? We have heard about the Virat Purusha a bit earlier, where we talked about the various parts of the Virat Purusha. Now, who is this Virat Purusha? So the Virat Purusha is the expansion of the second Vishnu, Garbhadaksha Vishnu. So Mahavishnu, we know Karnadaksha Vishnu lies down on the causal ocean, and then from the water is created, the causal ocean created from his perspiration. And then when Mahavishnu breathes out through the pores of his skin, innumerable universes come out. And then Mahavishnu, because the bodies can be created, but unless they are maintained by the Lord, they are of no use. So in each of those universes, the Lord expands, Mahavishnu expands again, and then in each of those universes, he enters as Garbhadaksha Vishnu. And so when Garbhodaksha Vishnu enters each of those universe, the universe begins to develop. And it begins to develop into, and you will have seen the picture, it looks, it begins to develop as a huge universal shell. And that huge universal shell, Garbhodaksha fills up with his, with his water, and he lies on the Garbh ocean and Udaka, and he lies down. And then from his navel, a lotus comes out, and on that lotus flower, Vishnu gives birth to Lord Brahma, as we've seen, the first living entity of the entire universe. But when Lord Brahma is born, he sees darkness all around, he couldn't understand anything. And then we've seen how he does tapa, and by the direction and then the Lord comes in front of him and gives him knowledge. Now, in addition to knowledge, the Lord also gives Brahma the skills and also the ingredients to create the universe and create the Prajapatis. So we go back to the Prajapatis. So we see the Lord Brahma first creates the Prajapatis, and then the Prajapatis further creates the various species. Now, the Prajapatis, in order to do further creations, are dependent on the manifestation of the Virat Purusha. How? So when the personalities take birth, at the beginning of creation, there requires to be a place of birth. Where will they take birth? In the causal ocean, in the Garbhodaka ocean, where will they take birth? So they'd require a place to take birth. And that place is created by this expansion of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, who's called the Virat Purusha. And the Virat Purusha, what he does is he creates the different planetary systems and the planets. So these planets, they seem to come automatically into existence, but no, they're actually creations of the Virat Purusha. And the Virat Purusha employs the three gunas, who are again acting upon those 5 elements, and the different planets are created with different situations. So the higher planets, the heavenly planets, the middle planet, the earth planets, the bhuvas, and then we see the swaha, which is the heavenly planets, and we also see the 7 lower planets, lower planetary systems. But so the Virat Purusha, he creates these so that the places are set up for the different jivas to be situated in these planetary systems. So the Prajapatis are born into these 14 planetary systems. So before the Prajapatis were born, the Virat Purusha, the Garbhodaksha Vishnu expands into Virat Purusha and makes sure the 14 planetary systems are in order and in place. So we see that these 14 planetary systems are created again with the help of those 5 elements, with the help of that force, the 3 gunas, so with the help of everything that was provided right at the beginning of creation. And so with using all of that, Virat Purusha sets up the platform for the different jivas to, the different species to be created by the Prajapati, first by Brahma and then by the Prajapatis. So in a sense, we understand that the Virat Purusha is actually the sum total of all the senses of all the living entities. And then these senses, they get differentiated into the different senses of the living entities as they take birth into the various species, first the Prajapatis and then the various species. So I may think that, I have got my eyes and mouth, but actually these all belong to the Virat Purusha, because ultimately they all these senses, everything, my perception, the senses, they all come from the Virat Purusha. They have been awarded to me at the time of creation, at the time when I take birth. And when I say when I take birth, what does that mean? When I get a gross body in this material world, based on the karma, of course, the karma attached to, the jiva, the soul, or, the soul doesn't carry it, but we know how the subtle body carries the karma and the desire, and then the material body, the next material body is given accordingly. So creation means awarding these material bodies, but the material body means awarding the different senses. So the material body is not just the flesh and bones, but the material body is also the senses. And these senses actually belongs to the Virat Purusha, who give individual senses in terms of the different types of body. So an ant will have different senses, a lion will have different senses, a human body will have different senses, and even, differentiating between, each different human being will have different senses. So this body, as we say, so because the Virat Purusha gives all of this to us, the Virat Purusha is called the body, the gross body, the senses, everything. The Virat Purusha is the adipotic person. So he is called the Purusha because he is controlling, he is the adipotic, he is called the adipotic Purusha. These senses collectively belong to one person, and that one person is the Virat Purusha. Even though these senses are distributed amongst different individuals, and the individual, different persons in the different material bodies, and then these material bodies, they are given the duration of, these senses remain in these material bodies for a certain duration, which is their lifespan. And every living being have, they have different species, they have different lifespans. So the lifespans are durations with which the living entities can have these senses of, hearing, seeing, watching, tasting, perceiving, etc., which are given to them by the Adipotic Purusha, which is the Virat Purusha. So that is creation, getting this material body, okay, and then, getting these senses and having this material body. And so at the end, and so the body is not different to the senses. These senses appear as live or dead matter because they are basically matter. They're basically matter. They're made from those 5 elements who were appointed by the Virat Purusha. So we see how the body and the senses are created. So, we see what we have over here. And that is the one who is in charge of all of that is the Adipotic Purusha. Now, then we come to the next part. Now, these matters, so we have the body. Now, these matters and these senses, all of that we have in our body, they are energized by an energy called the prana, which is our life force. And that life force or prana, which we have heard, we have learned about this in Bhagavad Gita as well. That life force is circulating within the bodies. And because of that prana, which the bodies have, the senses, we can use the senses. The senses can only, remember the senses, they are just matter made from those 5 elements. Okay, so for the senses to work, they need this prana, they need this life force. Okay, and with the help of this prana, which is the fundamental life force, the senses can function. And this prana belongs again to the Virat Purusha, the Lord who owns all these senses. And so when he withdraws the prana, these senses, they just become dead matter. And that is when a living entity is said to have left this material world. At the time of creation, at the time of the birth of this material body, this prana is injected into the material body of this living entity, whichever species it is in. And the senses are just merely instruments, but they work only because of the prana, this life air that has been given to them by the Virat Purusha. So this prana is given to the living entity at the time of birth by the Lord, and it is withdrawn in time. When the life goes away, when a person leaves this material body and dies. So the Virat Purusha, who owns and controls all the senses, is the adipotic person. An individual jiva who gets the body and utilizes the senses and works with the senses, that is called the adhyatmic person. So the senses, it's not the soul, but, who utilizes the soul, gets the body and utilizes the senses and works with the senses. And so it's called the adhyatmic person. So, and there is the controlling for each part of our body. Every single part of our body is controlled by a demigod. The demigods are Jeev Tattvas. They are Jivas. However, they are empowered Jivas. They have way, way more control than ordinary Jivas. And every single part of our body is controlled by a demigod, whether it's our eyes, nose, even the eyelids, our nails, everything is controlled. And so the controlling deity for every action, every sense, every part of the body who is in charge of the demigod who in charge is called the Adi Daivik, or the controlling entity. So you see, so when this verse talks about the controlled, that is I who starts to identify oneself with the senses and the body. So the jiva, defects from the spiritual world. So he has that free will to defect from the spiritual world, comes into the material world. Now, it's like choosing a job. I can choose whichever job. There are 3 or 4, organizations, and I give interviews, and I get my job in 3 different companies. I choose company A. But as soon as I choose company A, as soon as I join company A, I come under the control of the rules of company A. So similarly, the controlled is when the jiva, as soon as the jiva chooses to come into this material world, they come under the control of this material world, of Maya, of this material energy. So that is that adhyatmic who is the controlled. The adipotic, who's the controlling entity for each of our senses? The demigods. So that's the Adidaivik. And the senses, all our senses, the body, the gross, and the senses, everything is given to us by who? Who is responsible for everything to combine, the gunas to act, and all the things to be done? The expansion of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, or the Virat Purusha. So the gross body, all the senses, all of that is the adipotic Purusha. And the Lord and all the limitations of the material body that the species have got, whichever species, they all come under the control. They are all adipotic, under the control of that. Does it make sense? Is it okay to continue?
Amazing, Mataji, amazing sense. It makes so much sense. I've never heard it like this before. Thank you. Okay. It's an area that I was always afraid of because I don't seem to understand it very clear. But this is a really good class. Thank you very much.
Sorry. So please stop me if I'm going wrong anywhere, okay? So just a little bit left. I know we have only 3 minutes left. So in verse 8, we see how it's said that all these 3 are non-different. They are non-different from each other. What does that mean? So it means that, all the 3 are meant to combine for accomplishing the same purpose. So in respect of the purpose, they are non-different because, so for example, say for example, we wanted to see an object. And because there's no time, we can't go in details. To see an object, we first need the gross body. We need the adibhotic. We have to have the eyeballs. Okay. Then we need the adhyatmic. We need those senses, the senses of perception. Okay. And then lastly, we also need the mercy of the sun god, Surya Devta. Because if he is the deity in charge of our eyes. So if not for the mercy of the sun god, who again, looks into our karmic reactions from before, if he is pleased, only he will give us, he will allow us to see the light, and then our senses will be able to perceive through the gross body, through the eyeballs, to actually get vision. So you see, when we function as a material body, all these three need to combine for something to happen. All the three things. So the controlled, the controlling, and the senses, they all need to combine. So these three persons are the three things being mentioned in our verse today. And so these senses, they require the instruments, and so they are the adhyatmic, the controller of the individual senses. There is the deity, the adidaivic, the deity controls that, and we also see who is the adibhautic. So in summary, right at the beginning, we see that, for creation, Vishnu employs the material energy for creation, and the living entities who come into this material world, they all take birth as individual souls who are injected by this material energy by the glance of Mahavishnu. As we see in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that, for Sarvajyoni, he's the beach. So I am the seed-giving father. So that seed is injected into this material universe, into the living entity, and the spirit soul is injected into the material nature, which acts as the womb. And this material nature is on which the Mahavishnu glances, he agitates, and then, creation starts. So when we talk about birth in this material world, it means getting the material body. But getting the material body is nothing but just acquiring the senses through which we can work and through which we can perceive. So we see how the Lord is creating this whole material body, maintaining it through the prana. So as creator, the Lord injects the prana, and, he creates the material body, and then he injects that prana, that life force, which awards the senses and the living entity to work. And all of that is injected right at the time of birth. And as long as the prana vayu circulates in the body by the arrangement of the Lord, which Lord? The Paramatma, who's in charge, our local Paramatma who's inside each of us. He's in charge of the, he looks after the, as soon as the Virat Purusha gives that prana, there's the Paramatma in us who also, who looks after that. And then, that circulates in the body for maintenance. Okay. And when that pranavayu is withdrawn, that is the destruction of the body, and the body cannot be maintained anymore. And what happens to that body? Because it's just made up of matter, it disintegrates into the 5 elements right at the beginning we started with. So even the senses, the gross body, everything just becomes matter. And it goes back to the reservoir of, earth, water, air, ether, and fire. So Vishnu injects the pranavayu, creates, maintains the pranavayu, and withdraws the pranavayu when time comes. And so we see the Vishnu is the creator, maintainer, and withdrawer of all the living entities. And who is this Vishnu? This Vishnu is none other than an expansion of the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Krishna. So we say that the ultimate source and the ultimate cause of everything, of everything, the ultimate shelter of everything is none other than Krishna. So we just talked about individual living beings being created. All the living beings come together to form a universe. All the universes then come together, you know, to make up the material world. There's so many, you know, Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual world. So, you know, this is just only the creation, maintenance, and destruction of a living entity, but he does that in the whole form, in a much, much larger scale. And, you know, that goes on, and he's in charge of all. So this is just one perception of, you know, creation, maintenance, and destruction. There are various ways in which these three things have been mentioned in the Shastras and in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is one way of understanding it. It's just one perception, and we will be studying different other ways of understanding the same thing as well, because it's so huge and so complex. But I know it's 4 minutes past the time, but if you can give me a couple of more minutes, then I would like to end with another very short pastime, if I may have your permission.
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Because we are talking about shelter again, it's again, you know, we see how it's created. We talked about creation, maintenance, and destruction. So how do we, and we've talked about the technical sides, how do we understand that in Kali Yuga? How do we understand that in practical terms? So this is taught to us by Mahaprabhu when he came. So once in Varanasi, Mahaprabhu came across the great sannyasi, impersonalist sannyasi, who, you know, a great sannyasi of the Mayavadi school called Prakashananda Saraswati. You might have heard about him. And so Prakashananda, you know, it's a long past time again, but in a meeting of the two great personalities, Mahaprabhu and Prakashananda Saraswati, Prakashananda Saraswati asked Mahaprabhu, you know, why are you just going around talking and, you know, just chanting the names of the Lord, doing Sankirtan? Why don't you actually go back to the basics and talk about the Vedanta, talk about the Vedas, the teachings of the Vedas, talk about the Vedanta Sutra? Why not go back to the books and talk and, you know, teach people, preach people about that? Why are you going around like a madman, just chanting the names of the Lord? And Mahaprabhu answers that, you know, because my guru told me that I am a fool, and I do not have the understanding of, to understand the Vedas. I don't really have that intelligence to understand it. Now, this is Mahaprabhu, who was also called Nimai Pandit. He was a great scholar. You know, when he was very, very young, he had his own toll. He used to teach at a very young age. He started teaching about, you know, the Sanskrit to so many people. And we've seen, you know, how he defeated other scholars in, you know, his understanding of Shastras and Sanskrit. And this is Mahaprabhu telling Prakashananda Saraswati that my guru told me that I'm a fool. And the only thing I'm capable of doing is just doing the names of the Lord, and that is how I will get my realization of the Lord. Or in other words, what is Mahaprabhu teaching us? We are in Kali Yuga. We don't, you know, we don't have the ability to pray a lot, do yagnas a lot, do meditations for thousands of years, as did the previous people of previous ages. However, Mahaprabhu is teaching us three things that we can do over here to, you know, to maintain ourselves. He, the Lord, He has created us. We are extremely lucky to get this rare, very rare human form. So we have come into creation. We've got this human body. How do we maintain it? We maintain it, okay, through the chanting of the names of the Lord, which is like our life air. That's our prana. Okay, that is how we maintain it. How do we maintain it? With humility. As the Lord said, as he told Prakashananda Saraswati, my guru said, I'm a fool. And he's Nimai Pandit, you know, but that is how, if we chant the names of the Lord with an ego, that is not going to work. That's not going to maintain us. So we have to chant the names of the Lord with humility. And that is what will take us towards realization. That is what is going to maintain us. And as they say, that even if there is a destruction of this material body, because this material world is temporary anyway, so one might live, you know, even if you live until 100 years, after even Lord Brahma has, you know, 100 years. So after 100 years, the material bodies will go, which whatever lifespan each species has or each living entity has. However, Bhakti, that doesn't die. So if that name of the Lord carries us towards our eternal self, that will take us out of this material world and take us back to Godhead. And that is how we've come into creation, we can maintain ourselves by chanting the names of the Lord with humility. And that will help us from avoiding destruction. Not this material body, but destruction of our soul, because that will take us back to Godhead. If we do that with proper, you know, with humility and with proper attention. So with that, I complete our discussion today. Thank you so much for your mercies and allowing me to do the service. If I've made any mistakes, please do correct me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji. I know we have exceeded our time, but if there are any burning questions or comments, kindly unmute and ask, please. But it was an excellent class and you really simplified a very complex topic.
All the mercies of my Guru and Gauranga.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think there are no comments or questions. We can end the session here.
No question, but comments is really, really good, Mataji. You made it, as Mataji said, simplify it to our level. And I really understand it a lot better, but to remember it is another story. I'm going to try and listen to it again. We can access the recording, can't we?
Yes, you can. I'll by tomorrow it should be on the link, the YouTube link.
Thank
It
you.
takes time.
Very kind, yeah. And thank you for putting it so clear to us. And you know, it's an area that is not easy to understand.
And it's, you know, I wasn't able to understand it myself, Mataji, but again, through my guru, and also, as I said, I listened to some teachings by Stoka Krishna Prabhu, Radhapati Gopinath Prabhu. They were excellent, especially, you know, they really, really explained this very well, because I didn't think I have the intelligence to understand this. So if not for the teachings of these great devotees, and also the mercy of my guru. So thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, can you tell us those names again, please?
Yes, Stoka Krishna Prabhu.
Stoka.
Stoka. I can.
Okay.
Yeah, Stoka Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah.
And he has lots of YouTube videos, and he explains these technical things really well. And also Radhapati Gopinath Prabhu, who's based in Mayapur. Radhapati.
Pati. Ah, okay. Thank you very much. We do need it simplified. It's, you know, it does my head in when I have all these information so complex for me, you know, with the planetary system and everything and demigods, and it just confused me even more because too much information, too dense, if you see what I mean.
No, Mataji, I mean, it's the same. Same for me. I mean, you know, I don't have the intelligence to understand either.
Oh, you do. And the way you put it so simple. The thing is, these are the questions we ask, why this is and how does it come about and who is responsible and all those kind of things. So important. And you connected it so beautifully. Thank you so much. And I only by chance happened to get a chance to come and listen. So you see, Krishna sent me because he knew I was needing it. I was wanting to understand it more. Haribol.
Thank you so much for those kind words and comments.
Priya-
Can I
Priya Govinda Prabhuji, is there anything to correct me? Sorry, please do correct me if I've gone wrong there.
Hare Krishna Mataji, what a wonderful realization, a very, very powerful class. You have learned so much about the Ashraya Tattva, about the Atmic person, the Bautic person, and the Daivic person. It was very, very profound. And actually, maybe to add very little on that, that there's some practical lessons we can learn from these text or even the entire chapter about devotion through knowledge, realizing that the material creation is a purposeful act of the Supreme. We can deepen our devotion by contemplating the grandeur of the cosmos and its intricate order. A devotee can become inspired to glorify the Lord. So first we can draw from a practical lesson from devotion through knowledge, and also we can attain detachment since material nature is temporary, as we have seen, and is under divine control. One should not become overly attached to it. This understanding is very important because it aligns ourselves with the teachings of renunciation from the Bhagavad Gita. So this is amazing.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Priya Govind Prabhu, are you able to end the session as well?
Yes, Mataji. So we are so grateful, Mataji, for your wonderful class and your wonderful realization, and we hope to see you soon at the same forum, sharing your knowledge about the Gita, Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, and for the glorification of Panchali Mataji and the devotees present assembled on this forum, kindly unmute ourselves and chant one round of Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
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 Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Her Grace Panchali Mataji ki jai,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai,
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada
Pada
ki
ki
jai,
jai.
Jai Gaura Hari Premanande.
Panchakalpatarubhyasya
Kripa
Sindhu
Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki.
Jai,
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai,
Hari Hari Bol.
Hari.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.